ସାର୍ ନମସ୍କାର ସାର୍, କିଛି ଶୁଭୁନି ସାର୍।
ଆଉ 2-3 ମିନିଟ୍ ଟିକେ ୱେଟ୍ କରିବା, କାଳେ କିଏ ଜଏନ୍ କରିବେ, ତାପରେ ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ କରିବା। ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ ହେଇନି। Good evening, everybody. Today we shall read Block 4, and it is about biodiversity legislations, conventions, and management. And there are 4 units: Unit 13, 14, 15, and 16. Unit 13 is about international biodiversity laws and policies. Unit 14, national biodiversity laws and legislation. Unit 15, biodiversity management through ecosystem approach. Unit 16, sustainable harvesting of biological diversity. So first unit 13, international biodiversity laws and policies. So what are the laws on biodiversity at the international levels? So the biodiversity policies, they promote the protection, conservation, and sustainable use of biologically diverse ecosystems and habitat. Various agreements to protect biodiversity has been signed at international levels described below. So there are many agreements at the international levels between different countries, how to conserve biodiversity at different levels, genus, species, and ecosystem levels. So these are different agreements, and these agreements, they are signed by the countries at the international level. So this is the history. Throughout history, human societies have established laws and customs that keep the use of natural resources within limit to prevent long-term resource damage. So if we use the biodiversity, and in the long term, so there is a threat of damage. So there are different laws, and these laws they protect, and it gives a limit, and within the limit, and we have to use the biodiversity. So the first international treaty. So treaty, this is an agreement, and for this is for biodiversity conservation, and was it made in 18th century. So to end extinction of some of the world's most important marine species. So it was seen that the many marine species they became extinct, and to prevent these marine species and the extinction of the migratory birds, the first international treaty uh, at the international level, it was made in the 18th century. So in modern times, the efforts to manage biodiversity can be traced back to United Nations Conference on Human and People's Environment in Stockholm in 1972. So first we studied about the history. It was in 18th century, and it was before the establishment of United Nations. So after the establishment of United Nations, for the first time, a United Nations conference. It was held in Stockholm in 1972, and it was about human and people's environment. So this was the topic, and it clearly identified conservation as a policy. So this is the first time after in modern times. So that means after the formation of the United Nations. Then afterwards, many conventions they were organized. Different organelles, Heritage Convention, Water Treaty, Endangered International Trade in Endangered Species, Convention of Migratory Species, like this. So 20 years ago, the level of scientific uncertainty was high. So that means the knowledge about the biodiversity it was very less. So that is known as scientific uncertainty. So nowadays the knowledge base is increasing. So gradually the knowledge base about biodiversity it is increasing, and it is clear that the biodiversity supports human well-being and livelihood, and it is a it is critical to the success of many sustainable development goals or SDGs. So United Nations it has identified the sustainable development goals, and to achieve the sustainable development goals, the conservation of biology it is very important. So there are more than 300 biodiversity hotspots, and their aim is to protect certain species and also the ecosystems. So the conservation of biodiversity it is not only to preserve or protect a different species, but also different ecosystems. So at some international conventions, monitoring and reporting mechanisms associated with conference provision are considered. So in international conventions, so internationally conventions are held, and these conventions they monitor. So not only they discuss the problems and discuss about the solutions. But these conventions, they also monitor the biodiversity, whether there is a decline in biodiversity or increase in biodiversity, they have to monitor, and there are reporting mechanisms. Reporting mechanism means the countries, they have to report. So what steps they have taken and what is the result, what is the improvement in the biodiversity. So they have to report, and that is known as reporting mechanism. So in conventions, so there are discussions, they will discuss, and they will also monitor, and there is also reporting mechanism. So the meeting at the Rio summit in 1992. So when major legal obligations for environmental protection, including the Convention of Biological Diversity, were adopted. So in the meeting which was held in Rio, that is known as Rio Summit in 1992. So when the major legal obligations were adopted, that means the law were formulated, and the laws they were binding. The countries, they have to follow these rules or laws. That is known as legal obligation. So they are bound to follow the laws. Then Convention of Biological Diversity, or CBD, it was also created, and India was also a party, and it is participated in that event, and it is participating in major international events, conventions, summits since 1972. So there are different conventions. These are different conventions, and these important conventions, these are Ramsar Convention. Ramsar Convention, it was held in a place in Iran known as Ramsar, and this convention was about the protection of the wetlands present throughout the world. Like this, these are different conventions, and this is the one important convention on biological diversity, or CBD, and Paris Convention. Paris Convention, that is, it concerns with the world cultural and natural heritage protection, and these are different international conventions. The financial resources for global environmental protection. So for protection of environment and protection of biological diversity, fund is required, money is required. So how to get that money? So these are the financial resources. Then in internationally, so there are institutions which provide fund to different countries for implementation of the environmental programs like environmental protection. At the end of 1990, an agreement was reached to establish a global environmental facility. So to establish a facility known as Global Environmental Facility under a three-pronged agreement between World Bank, UNDP, and UNEP. So they provide fund they facilitate uh, to provide fund to different countries. The Convention on Biological Diversity or CBD, it is a very important convention. So the foundations for conservation of biodiversity in international law was led with the formulation of program in World Conservation Strategy in 1980, and biodiversity was first given place as a legal principle in the report of World Commission on Environment and Development in 1987. So, in the report of World Commission on Environment and Development, so this was in the year 1987. So, in this report, so the biodiversity was given place as a legal principle. So, legal principle means you have to, it was made a law. So, the biodiversity for conservation of biodiversity, it is to be made legal. So, the objectives of this commission, so these are conservation of biological diversity, then sustainable use of components. So this is components of biological diversity, then fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising out of the use of genetic resources. So there must be a conservation of biodiversity. So not only you have to conserve the biodiversity, so the people, they must also use the biodiversity. So you have to conserve, preserve, at the same time we must also use. So you have to use it sustainably. So this is the sustainable use. Then, so the use, when they get the benefit from the biological diversity, then it must be fair and equitable. That means if some countries, they get all benefits and other countries, they will not, not get the benefits. So if it is made legal, then the countries, they will, or countries or organizations or different communities, so they will share equitably. So they will get their own share. So these are the three objectives of CBD or Convention on Biological Diversity. So under this CBD, governments undertake to conserve and sustainably use biodiversity. So the governments, the different governments, they which are party to this convention, so they give undertaking that they will conserve biodiversity and they will use it sustainably. So this is the main point in the undertaking or the commitment, and there are also other commitments of the treaty. So these are given: identifying and monitoring the components of biodiversity, establishing protected areas, rehabilitating the and restoring degraded ecosystem. If in ecosystem it is degraded, then you also have to recover, and recovery of the threatened species, respecting, preserving, and maintaining traditional knowledge. So the people, they have knowledge about the use of the biodiversity, the traditional knowledge, how the people they use the plants, animals as medicine or as food. So this is a traditional knowledge. So the governments they have to respect and preserve this traditional knowledge, preserving the introduction of controlling and eradicating alien species. So alien species, they are a threat to biological diversity. There are many alien species, and in India also you will find many alien species, and they are a threat to the biodiversity, like in the lantana camera, which is a terrestrial species, alien species. Similarly, Icornia, so it is an aquatic species, alien species of India, and they are threat to ecosystem and biodiversity. So the governments they also undertake to control and eradicate those alien species, and controlling the risk posed by organisms modified by biotechnology. So by biotechnology, the modified organism or genetically modified organisms they are produced and we are using, and so if they have any effects on the environments, there risk, some risk. So we have to control the risk from the genetically modified organisms. So these are different other commitments. The main commitment is or undertaking is to conserve and sustainably use biodiversity. Then United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, or UNFCCC. So this is one convention, international convention, and it was signed in 1992. So it was signed at the United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. So in the conventions, the countries they sign some agreements. If a country signs an agreement, that means it will follow the rules, regulations, and laws. So and this constitutes the fundamental climate agreement that has provided the platform for most subsequent international climate agreements. So, in this convention, which was signed in 1992, then afterwards there were many conventions, and so the subsequent international climate agreements. So this convention, UNFCCC, this provided a platform, and for the other agreements, the UNFCCC entered into force on March 21, 1994. So the convention, it was signed in 1992, but the rules, so they came into force in 1994, and it was signed or ratified by 197 countries. If they ratify or sign the agreement, then they are ready, they agree to follow the rules. So the structure and content of the UNFCCC is styled as a framework convention. So a framework convention, it gives a broad commitment and it doesn't prescribe detailed targets. So it will not give details about what to do, what to not, and these what targets to achieve. Details it will not give, and it has given the flexibility to the countries. The countries, they are flexible to formulate their targets, and here the international cooperation, that is very, very important. And this type of conventions, these are known as framework conventions. So UNFCCC is a framework conventions. So it contains a few specific requirements. So it will give just broad guidelines, and it will not give details about to formulate the rules, to follow the principles. It will just give a broad outline, and it will not give any detailed targets, and it has very few specific requirements and no enforceable requirement for signatories to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases or GHS. So UNFCCC, so this convention requires to ask the countries to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, but it is not mandatory. How much the countries, so it depends on the countries. How much they will reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, it depends on the countries. So it is not compulsory. So this type of convention is known as framework convention. Some of the most significant ways that the UNFCCC has influenced and continues to shape international climate negotiations. So the international, afterwards, there were many negotiations, treaties, agreements on climate. So these negotiations, these are described. So common but differentiated responsibility, data gathering and reporting, administrative institutions, balance with industrialized countries, economic development. The first one is common but differentiated responsibilities. UNFCCC endorses the concept of common but differentiated responsibility. So we shall discuss about what is common responsibility and differentiated responsibility. So responsibility with regard to the climate. So common but differentiated responsibility means while developing countries, country parties are expected to contribute to climate mitigation because of superior capacity to undertake mitigation. So there are two types of countries, developing countries and industrial countries. So the developing countries expected to continue climate mitigation because of superior capacity to undertake mitigation and greater contribution to the problem of climate change as a result of historical emissions. Developed countries are expected to take the lead in combating climate change and the adverse effects thereof. So actually, wrongly, it is printed as developing countries, but it is we have to read it as developed countries or industrial countries. So the developed countries, so there are two types of countries: developed countries or uh, industrialized countries and developing countries. So the developed countries, they are expected to take the lead in combating climate change. So they have to take lead. So because they have superior capacity, so they have their financially they are strong and they are um, uh, strong in other they are strong in other aspects and they have emission is also very high. They produce much amount of the greenhouse gases. So the developed countries, so they will take the leads. The performance of developed country parties is conditioned on the adequate provision of financial support. So because the developing countries, they are poor, their financial capacity is less. So the the contribution of the developing countries, it depends on the provision of financial support and technology transfer from developed countries to developed countries, because the developed countries, they have technology, so they have finance, and they have also they have industries, they are industrialized, they have many industries, so they have produced a very large amount of greenhouse gases. So they have a much uh, important role. So but the developing countries, so their performance, this depends on the financial support from the developed countries and also transfer of technology, because they do not have technology to reduce the greenhouse gases. So they must get the technology also from the developed countries. So then data gathering and reporting. So the UNFCCC instituted a process for countries to generate and share data about domestic greenhouse emissions. So the countries, they have to generate the data, they have to collect the data about the generation of the greenhouse gases, how much gas is produced in the country, and they have to share their data. So the developed country parties are required to submit more detailed report. So because the developed countries, they produce more amount of greenhouse gases, so they have to give detailed description or the report about the emission of the greenhouse gases. So the developing countries, they are not required to give the details. They may not give the details about the say or share data about the emission of the greenhouse gases. But the developed countries, they have to share detailed data. Then administrative institutions. So the UNFCCC also provides the institutional structure for negotiation and adoption of a series of protocols. So UNFCCC, it was a convention. Then afterwards, there will be protocols, series of protocols. So there will be protocols, means there will be different meetings, and these meetings, these are known as protocols. So UNFCCC, this is a convention, and this convention, it gives a guidelines, and it is followed by many protocols or meetings. The meetings which follow, which are held after the convention, these are known as protocols. And the protocols, there are discussion about the what are the countries they have done and what is to be done in the future. So there will be these discussions in the protocols. So balance with industrialized countries. Industrialized nations agree under the convention to support climate change activities in developing countries. So the developed countries or industrialized countries, they have to support the developing countries. So what they will do, they will provide financial support and other actions uh, like the technology. They will also give technology, and this financial support or assistance, it is beyond the assistance already provided to these countries. The developed countries, they provide financial support to the developing countries for different purposes. So uh, this convention, UNFCCC, so this provides that the industrial countries, they have to support the developing countries above, over and above the assistance they have given before. Industrialized countries, they also agree to share technology to the less advanced or developing nations. So they will have to support them financially. They have to provide fund. They also have to share the technology, because the technology that is required to reduce the greenhouse gases. Because old technology in industries, they produce more amount of greenhouse gases, but new technologies, they produce less amount of greenhouse gases. So technology that is also required for reduction of the greenhouse gases. The next is economic development. Economic development is particularly vital to the world's poorer countries. So the poor countries, not only they have to reduce the emission of the greenhouse gases for climate, but they should also progress economically. So such progress is difficult to achieve. This convention takes into consideration by accepting that the share of greenhouse emissions produced by developing nations will grow in the coming years. So because when the poorer countries they try to develop, they establish new industries, and if they establish new industries, then they will produce greenhouse gases, and so the greenhouse gases emission that will increase, definitely increase for the poorer countries. But the developed countries, they have the technology to reduce the production of the greenhouse gases. But for poor countries, it is very, very different. And in poor countries, so there will be definitely there will be increase in the greenhouse gases because they will have to develop economically. So if they will develop economically, then so there will also be pollution and there will also be production of more amount of greenhouse gases. So there is another agreement under World Trade Organization. Just a minute. So under the World Trade Organization agreement, so there is an agreement. It is known as TRIPS or Trade Related as Intellectual Property Rights. Agreement on trade related aspects of intellectual property rights, and shortly this is known as TRIPS. So this is a multilateral agreement. So that means there are many parties. So if many parties they sign, they then agree, then this is known, they sign the agreement, then this is known as multilateral agreement. If there are only two parties, then it is known as bilateral. So it is an agreement on intellectual property rights. So the agreement is a legal recognition for of the significance of link between IP and trade, intellectual property and trade. So there is a link between the intellectual property and trade, and these are the features of the TRIPS. TRIP, it is a council. TRIPS transparency, then technical assistance, cooperation with intergovernmental organizations, trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. So the first one is TRIPS Council. So this council, so this is responsible for administrating and monitoring the operation of the trade agreement. So it holds regular meetings, and in the meetings, Trade Council serves as a forum for discussion between members. So the members they discuss on different aspects of the trade and about the intellectual property. So then transparency. The transparency mechanism helps TRIPS Council to monitor the operation of the TRIPS agreement and promote understanding of the members. So it also monitors the operation. So not only it provides a forum, but it also monitors the operation of the TRIPS. Then technical assistance. The main objective of World Trade Organization's technical assistance activity is to help members and observers implement the intellectual property regime that meet their developmental and other domestic policy objectives. So, uh, so it gives the technical assistance to different parties, to the member countries and also the observers. So there are some observers which observe and or monitor the activities of the countries, how they follow the trips objectives. So these provide the technical assistance. Then cooperation with other intergovernmental organizations. Just like the WTO, it is an intergovernmental organization. That means it coordinates different governments. That means different countries, because many countries they're party. Because there are many countries which are party, and different countries they have different governments, and where we are dealing with many countries and many governments. This organization that is known as intergovernmental organizations. So WTA, it has a secretariat, and it also cooperates with other organization like WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization. So there is one specific organization for intellectual property that is known as World Intellectual Property Organization. Then the trade related aspects of IP rights. The agreement on trade related aspects of intellectual property rights came into force in 1995 is part of the agreement establishing the World Trade Organization. So it was established in 1995. So there is another convention, so that is known as CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of World Fauna and Flora. So this is an international agreement to which states and regional economic integration organization adhere voluntarily. So it is not obligatory or compulsory. The states or the countries, they follow the guidelines according to their will, or they follow voluntarily. The CITES was drafted as a result of a resolution adopted in 1963 at the meeting of members of International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN. So the resolution, it was adopted in 1963, but it came into force in 1975. So there are different aims of CITES, like international trade in specimen of wild animals and plants doesn't threaten their survival. So if there is international trade of the wild plants or animals, so the wild plants and animals, they have different uses. The wild plants, they have medicinal values, and other values. So, there is also trade of the wild plants, animals uh, between different countries, and that is known as international trade. So, when you trade the wild animals and plants, the trade should not threaten their survival. So that is the aim of the CITES. So the function of CITES, it controls the trade of the specimen or selected species, import, export, re-import, re-export, and introduction. Uh, so these are different aims. Then there is another convention. This is known as, it is also very important convention, and it is known as Ramsar Convention. So the convention on wetland of international importance holds the unique distinction of being the first modern treaty between nations aimed at conserving natural resources. So for conservation of natural resources, so this Ramsar Convention, it is very important. This Ramsar Convention, it is about the conservation of wetlands. So the signing of the Convention of Wetland, so it took place in 1971 in an Iranian village, and that is known as Ramsar. The name of the village, that is known as town. It is a small place, Ramsar, of Iran. And in this town, this convention, Ramsar Convention, this convention was held. That is why the name, it was given Ramsar Convention. And this convention, it is to conserve the wetlands. So the aim of the Ramsar Convention is to halt the worldwide loss of wetlands and to conserve those wetlands. So what are the wetlands? The wetlands, they include swamps, marshes, billabongs. So billabongs, a billabong is a branch of river forming a stagnant pool. So a river, it flows, and if a river, it is a branch, and the water enters into that branch, and when the water becomes less in the river, then the branch, it will become separate, it will form a stagnant pool like structure. So that is known as billabong. Billabongs means it is a pond, but the source of the water, it is the river. So these are different salt marshes, mud flats, mangroves, coral reefs, peat bogs, and any type of water bodies. So the water bodies, they may be natural or artificial. So there are natural lakes, and there are ponds which are not natural. We dig to create the ponds. So these are artificial ponds, and they may be permanent or temporary. Permanent means there will be water throughout the year, and temporary means in summer it may become dry, and again in the rainy season, so there will be water, so it is temporary. So water, it may be flowing water or maybe static water, it may be fresh water or saline water, just like sea, or mixed water, just like in brackish water. So these are different aims. So in designing a wetlands as a Ramsar site, if there is an wetland and the country, it has to designate it as a Ramsar site. So if the countries, it designates a wetland as a Ramsar site, that means the countries agrees to establish and oversee management framework aimed at conserving the wetland and ensuring its wise use. So the country, it has to agree to conserve the wetland, and so there are many Ramsar sites. There are wetlands which are designated as Ramsar site, just like the Chilka Lake of Odisha. So the Chilka Lake of Odisha, it is a Ramsar site. Then international undertakings on plant genetic resources and farmers' rights. So there are many international agreements and undertakings on plant genetic resources and farmers' rights. So these are the ways how to protect the plant genetic resources, to promote the development of technology, assessing levels of diversity in genetic resources, to reinforce the policy of conservation, in situ and ex situ conservation. So these are different ways how plant genetic resources can be conserved. And to promote farming methods, enhancing biodiversity. So there are some farming methods which decrease biodiversity. So, but we have to find out the farming methods. So the methods which will improve or increase the biodiversity, so that the um, farmers, they will also get the benefits from biodiversity. Then UPOV, Convention and the Rights in Plant Variety. Then there is another convention, UPOV. So wrongly it is written as UPOVE. So the International Union for Protection of New Varieties of Plants. So this is known as UPOV, and this is a convention, just like other conventions. So the plant treaty includes Article 9. So so the treaty, it has different articles, and the Article 9, it is related to the farmers' rights. So the farmers, they also have a right on the biodiversity and the farms. So farmers' rights, the Article 9 says about the farmers' right, and in particular the rights of farmers to save, exchange or sell farm saved seeds. So the farmers, they purchase seeds from different companies, different industries. They purchase seed and they use in their farmlands. And when they produce seed, so they must have the right to save those seeds and to grow in the next season. But the breeders, that means the uh, organizers or the people who produce the new seeds, new varieties of seeds, they are known as breeders. The breeders generally of the view that some royalties should be paid on further use of their seeds. The breeders, they produce um, new varieties of plants by breeding. So if they produce a variety and they sell the seeds to the farmers, and the farmers, they grow plants from those seeds, and the breeders say that the farmers, they should again purchase the seed from the breeders. And then the farmers, they should not use the seed again in the next season. And if they grow the plants in the next season, then they must pay the breeders. So, uh, so this is the view of the breeders. But the farmers, according to farmers, they have the right, because they once they purchase the seed, they have right to um, grow the plants year after year. So the farmers, they say that the breeders have been using the seeds, so which are produced by the farmers from many generations. Actually, the farmers, they produce the seeds from many generations, and from these seeds, the breeders, they use those seeds and they produce new varieties by breeding. International Tropical Timber Agreement, or ITTO, so that was established in 1983. So it negotiates it under the auspices of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. So this is um, another agreement, so about the use of the timber in tropical areas. So this ITTO is an intergovernmental organization. That means this organization, it has many countries. So it is intergovernmental organization. So it promotes the sustainable management and conservation of tropical forest, and how to conserve the tropical forest, and the use of the tropical forest in a sustainable way, and trade in tropical forest resources, and it also includes the trade in the forest resources in tropical area. So the programs of ITTC, so there are forest law enforcement, industry development, trade and market, transparency, community management, forest management, reducing deforestation, enhancing environmental services. Then role of institutions and policy, etc. Making in conservation. Okay, we'll leave it. Then, so we have discussed about the international laws or international legislations on biodiversity, and there are also some national laws and legislation on biodiversity. We will take a break of 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, again we shall start. Uh, okay, let us start again. So there are just like there are different international conventions or international laws on biodiversity. There are different laws, legislation on biodiversity at the national level. Uh, the Biological Diversity Act or BDA, it was enacted in 2002. It was protected to give effect to the Convention on Biological Diversity. So there is International Convention on Biological Diversity or CBD, and at the national level, and to give effect to these convention, to follow these conventions at the national level. So Biological Diversity Act, it was formulated in 2002. So the legal features of the uh, Biological Diversity Act. So these are the law prohibits the following activities without obtaining approval from the National Biodiversity Authority. So there are some activities. So you have to follow for these activities. You have to obtain the approval of the National Biodiversity Authority. So any person or organization who requires any biological resource from India through its research or commercial use. So for commercial use or for research use, if some person or organization it requires uh, the biological resource, then you have to take the approval of the National Biodiversity Authority. Then transfer the result of any research related to any biological resource that occur. Then you have to take the approval. Then by the research, if you find any result, then you have to transfer that result. So these are different legal features. The Act envisages a three-tier structure to regulate the access to biological resources. So to get the biological resources, the person or the organization, um, for regulation of the resources, there are three-tier structure. So at the national level, so there is a National Biodiversity Authority. Then at the state level, there is State Biodiversity Board. And at the local level or the regional level, so there are biodiversity management committees. So to regulate the use of the biological resources, so there are three-tier structure. So at three different levels: national level, state level, and the local level. At the national level, it is NBA. State level, it is SBB, and in state level SBBS. S means it is plural. That means in different states there are different state biodiversity boards. Similarly, BMCs, biodiversity management committees. So these committees, they are in different local levels. It may be in the district level or it may be in block level. So these are the local levels or the regional levels. So this is at national level, National Biodiversity Authority, state level, State Biodiversity Board, and at the local level, Biodiversity Management. So any complaint relating to determination of revenue sharing or an order of the National Biodiversity Authority Board or State Council of Provinces under this Act will be referred to National Green Tribunal or NGT. So there may be some complaints about the misuse of the biodiversity. So if there is any complaint, so the committees, different committees at the local level, they may complain, or the state biodiversity, it may have some complaint. So these complaints, this must be referred to the National Green Tribunal. So there is another organization, and that is known as National Green Tribunal. Then other rules that NGT work. So NGT deals with the complaints from the uh, National Biodiversity Authority. Then it also deals with water pollution, water taxation, water forest, the Forest Conservation Act, Air Prevention and Control Act, Environmental Protection Act, Social Responsibility Finance. Then National Biodiversity Policy. So there is a policy on the conservation of biodiversity at the national level, and that is known as National Biodiversity Policy. The Convention on Biological Diversity, or CBD, it calls for the groups to develop a national biodiversity strategy and program, NBSAP. So to ensure that the objective of the convention are met in each country. According to Article 6 of CBD, the countries, they have to develop a national biodiversity strategy and program. So for each country. So India, it also has a national biodiversity strategy. So the environmental protection is it is enshrined in the Constitution of India. So the Constitution of India, it also includes the environmental protection. The Article 48A of Constitution of India and the Article 51A G of the Directive Principles of State Policy, which is a part of the Constitution of India, and it states that the state shall strive to protect and enhance environment and protection of forest and wildlife in the country. So there is a provision in the Constitution also that the state, or that means the government, it will protect the wildlife and the forest. And it is the responsibility of every citizen to protect and improve the national environment, including forest, lake, river, wildlife, and to be more compassionate with biodiversity. So it is not only the responsibility of the government, but also it is also the responsibility of the citizens or the people of India to protect and improve the environment. And the environment, it may be a forest, lake, river, or any uh, type of habitat, and the biodiversity. So the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So the Ministry of this Ministry of Government of India or the central government, it focuses for biodiversity conservation, and it also deals with the environment and forest issues. Ministry of Environment and Forest. So it focuses on protection of biodiversity by declaring it as national park or wildlife sanctuary or natural reserve or vulnerable areas. So there are different types of um, areas um, for protection, like the national parks, wildlife sanctuaries. So these are established by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. And another activity is conservation programs such as leopards and elephants, as well as wildlife sanctuaries. Then declaration of natural parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and also conservation of specific animals like leopard, elephant, tiger, crocodile, etc. So the protected areas, so they are established by the Ministry of Environment and Forest, and these protected areas, they are approximately 4.74% of the country's total land area. So the protected areas which are declared by Ministry of Environment and Forest, it constitute 4.74% of the country's total area. And then local biodiversity strategy and action plan guidelines. The local action have global consequences. Or so if you act locally, then it will also have a effect um, globally. It will have global effect. Or so if you any effect. So if you produce the greenhouse gases, then this greenhouse effect, it will affect the local area as well as other countries also, all parts of the world. So the local actions, whether the actions they are good or bad. So if you reduce the emission, if you reduce the amount of the greenhouse gases at the local level, then there will also some reduction of these gases at the global level. So any action, it has global consequences. Then brief idea about patents. A patent for an invention is the grant of property right to the inventor used by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So, United States Patent and Trademark Office, it gives a property right to an invention. So, if somebody invents some new things, it is to apply for the patent. So, the patent. So, if you are given a patent or granted a patent, that means only you have that right to use. So, this patent that is valid for 20 years from the date on which application for that patent was filed. So, there are different laws, rules in different countries, and in United States. So, that was the first countries to grant patent, and that patent that is valid for 20 years from the date of application. If you give application for a patent, then from that date up to 20 years, it will be valid. So, this right, you have a right. The person which has been granted the right, the patent, the person which has been granted the patent, it is the right. So it is different right. So it is the right to exclude others from making, using, offering for sale, or selling. So if you have some invention, new invention, then if you are granted the patent, then others, they cannot use that invention and they cannot sell to other people. They cannot um, use without your permission. So this is the patent, and there are different types of patents: utility patents, design patents, plant patents. Utility patents, if someone invents or discovers any new or useful process or process or machine. So if you invent one machine, new machine, then it has some utility, and these machines, if you are granted a patent, then only you can use that machine, and other people they cannot use without your permission. That is utility patent. Then design. So if you produce a new design and if you get patent, then um, that design others cannot use. If you produce a new design of an ornament, any gold or any ornament, you have a very new design, and if you get patent and the same design others cannot use, that is for 20 years. So that is a design patent. Then plant patent. So if you discover any new substance or chemical from a plant, like medicine, then and you get a patent, then other people they cannot produce, use that chemical of that plant for their use without your permission, and that is valid for 20 years. So that may be a new plant produced by the tissue culture or a new variety of plant. So this patent, it is known as plant patents. Then another type of patent, this is known as copyright. So copyright, this also gives intellectual property right. So it is one form of intellectual property right. Copyright is the form of protection provided to the author of original work. So if you write any article, if you write any essay or story or any poem or any music, any song, any music or any paint uh, um, or any art, so then you also have the copyright. If you get uh, the protection, then this is known as copyright. Then trademark and trade related aspect of intellectual property rights, and this is known as TRIPS, Agreement on Trade Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights. And this came into force in 1995. And as an agreement, India has agreed to World Trade Organization or WTO to establish this trade-related aspect of intellectual property rights. So, so this TRIPS applies to basic international trade principle. So there is a trade among different countries, and this is known as international trade. And for trades, there are different principles. You have to there are follow these principles or agreements, and this comes under the TRIPS. And the TRIPS establishes minimum standards for availability, scope, and use. So this TRIPS, it is related to the availability and use of the intellectual properties. So there are 7 forms of intellectual properties. These 7 forms of intellectual properties are copyrights, trademarks, uh, then geographical indications, industrial designs, patents we have discussed, layout designs. Then for integrated circuits, integrated circuits, there are different designs. So if you produce a particular design, then you also get protection. And that is also intellectual property. And undisclosed information. That means there are some trade secrets. So there are some secrets. If you do not keep that secret, then you may be at a loss. So eco-labeling notifications. So eco-labeling, that means you have to label that protect, you have to label that product that this is environmentally, it is good. So if you produce a product, then this production of the process of the production of that product, it may be harmful to the environment. So if you label it, eco-label it, that means you give a certificate that this the process of this production of this product, it is sustainable and it is not harmful to the environment. That means you certify that the Indian Eco Mark, it certifies that it is environmental friendly product, and it was established in 1991. Just like there is a BSI standard, ISI standard. Similarly, so there is Indian Eco Mark, and when there is Indian Eco Mark, when any product it receives the Indian Eco Mark, that means this product that is environmental friendly. So, what are the criteria to get the Eco Mark or the Eco labeling? It should cause a very less pollution. Then they must be recycled. So the product it must be recycled, and they make a contribution to saving non-renewable resources. So by the process of the production of that product, by the production of this that product, so they have used much amount of renewable sources of energy and less amount of non-renewable source of energy. So these are the criteria, and other criteria they contribute to reduction of adverse environmental effect. Price is not very high, and it complies with the laws and standards. The product it is produced according to the laws. So if it fulfills these criteria, then it will be given the eco labeling. Then there is DNA barcoding. DNA barcoding is a method of species identification using a short section of DNA from a specific gene or genes. So just like we have barcodes of many products, if you go to a specific shopping mall, then uh, there will be codes in different products, and if you scan the barcode, and you will get the information about the product, and that barcode that is specific for that product, and that barcode that is not be used in any other product. That means that the barcode that is specific for that product. Similarly, barcoding of any species is known as uh, the DNA barcoding. So just like the barcoding, it has different lines. You'll get dark and light lines, and it is specific. Similarly, the DNA sequence of that species that is also specific. So a small part of the DNA it is taken of that species, and the sequence of that DNA it is converted to a barcode, and that is known as DNA barcoding. And from that DNA barcoding, we can identify a particular species. So that DNA barcoding that is specific only for that species, not for any other species. So there is another act, the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act 2001. Protection of Plant Variety and Farmers' Right Act 2001 is an act of parliament. So it was enacted by the Parliament of India. It is at the national level and enacted to provide for establishment of an effective system for protection of plant varieties. So this act provides for the protection of the plant varieties. and the rights of farmers and plant breeders. So um, there must be protection of the varieties, plant varieties, and the plant breeders they have some rights, and the farmers which use the varieties they have also some rights, and um, so this is provided by this act. So it encourages to develop and cultivation of new varieties of plants. So it encourages to produce and use new varieties of plants, and the protection of the varieties, and the rights of the farmers, and the rights of the plant breeders. So these are the rights of the breeders. Breeders have the exclusive right to produce, sell, market, distribute, import or export the protected variety. So if a breeder it produces a particular variety, then it will be protected, and uh, it will get the intellectual property rights. And if it gets the intellectual property right, then uh, it can only produce, sell, and market or import or export these varieties. So they have a right, and others they cannot use. Similarly, the researchers also they also have some rights, and the farmers they also have rights. A farmer who has evolved or developed a new variety is entitled for registration and protection, just like a breeder. Just like a breeder, by breeding they produce new varieties. The farmers they may also develop new varieties because of their experience and selection, and because they deal with many varieties, and from they can also produce new varieties, and these farmers they also have the right for protection just like the breeders. And the farmers they can save, use, sow and reuse, sow, exchange, share, and sell his farm produce, including the seed variety protected under the protection of varieties. So according to the protection of variety, so the breeders they have a right. Similarly, if a farmer it buys the seeds, then once it buys the seed, then it can use, it can sow and produce the crop. Then it can also exchange the seeds with others, and it can share to others. And the when they produce the farm product, if they produce the crop, if they produce the vegetables or produce any crop, then they have also the right to sell their product. So these are the rights of the farmers. Uh, so there are many conservation projects or programs undertaken by conservation and environmental organization to protect biodiversity, wildlife places, or endangered species. So for protection of biodiversity, protection of wildlife or wild places, that means the habitats or the endangered species. So there are many conservation projects like Save Barasinga campaign, then Gir Lion project. So Gir Lion project to increase the number of the lions. Similarly, Save Barasinga It is also a threatened species in Madhya Pradesh. Then Asiatic lion reintroduction process, because this Asiatic lion in India it was extinct in different places, and the reintroduction means um, the transfer of the lions from one place to another place where the lions are extinct. This is known as reintroduction. So this project, then Project Tiger. So this conservation program launched in 1973 by Government of India during Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. So the project is aimed at ensuring viable population of Bengal tigers in the natural habitat, protecting them from extinction. So from this project, the number of tigers increased from 1200 to 5000. So now there are about 50 national parks and sanctuaries that are involved in this project. The project means the Project Tiger. Similarly, Project Crocodile. There are three species of crocodile. One is common name is Gharial, Gravilis, Gangeticus. Then another species, Sverine crocodile or the Crocodilus porosus. And the third species, Mugger or the Crocodilus palustris. So these are the three species of crocodiles, and for management of crocodiles, Crocodile Project Crocodile, it was established in 1973. Then Project Elephant, it was launched in 1992. Then Project Musk Deer, so the Himalayan musk deer. So it is a deer found in Himalayas. So it is also listed in endangered species category. Yesterday we discussed about the endangered species red list of IUCN, and already we have discussed about in situ conservation and ex situ conservation, and the restriction on the use and the trade. So there are some animals which we cannot use or trade. So there are some restrictions in these animals like musk deer. Then Project Grow Antlered Deer. So this is an endangered species in Manipur, and that is also the state animal of Manipur. Then Project Lion-tailed Macaque. So this primate that is endemic to the rainforest of Western Ghats. So that is found only in Western Ghats, and it is not found in any other places. So these are the case studies. Just briefly, we shall discuss the last unit, the ecosystem biodiversity management through ecosystem approach. So what is ecosystem approach? The ecosystem approach is more concerned with management at the level of systems than focusing on one species or habitat. So the project tiger, project elephant, project leopard, so these they deal with only one species. So dealing with one species or any particular habitat. So the system approach, it deals with the conservation of the whole ecosystem, not only a single species or the habitat, but this whole ecosystem. So this ecosystem, it is because we conserve the ecosystem, we deal with the conservation of the ecosystem because of the services the ecosystem provides. The services are ethics and values, cost savings, corporate reputation, management risk. Sorry, so these are the services provisioning, supporting cultural and regulating we have discussed earlier. So the Article 2 of the Convention on Biological Diversity. So according to this article, ecosystem means, so this gives the definition of the ecosystem. So there are three approaches to conservation, three approach. First one is classical approach. So according to classical approach, that means that is the old approach. According to this approach, local people to be a threat to environmental conservation. So this approach considers the local people as a threat to conservation. But the populist approach, uh, according to this, the conservation requires the participation and participation and empowerment of local people. So in classical approach, the local peoples they're excluded, and in populist approach, the local people they're included in conservation. Then the neoliberal. So new means new. So it uh, gives importance to biodiversity in order of conservation to be incorporated in the economic system. So the according to this approach, the biodiversity conservation, so this must also deal with the economic development. So the conservation of biodiversity along with the economic development. Classic. So these are different principles of ecosystem approach. So there are many principles. 12 principles. So these are the case studies. Then sustainable harvesting of the biodiversity. That means you have human beings, they depend on biodiversity. Biodiversity, it has many uses. So you have to use biodiversity. So you have to depend on the forest. You have to use the forest plants, trees for our use. You have also to use animals, just like we are using animals for milk. We are using animals for food, meat. So you have to use or harvest biodiversity. So definitely you have to use biodiversity. And if you use biodiversity, then biodiversity, there will be a loss of biodiversity. But sustainable harvesting, that means you use in such a way that there will be no overuse, and the biodiversity that will also be conserved. So there are two approaches. First, you have to conserve the biodiversity, and at the same time, you also have to use biodiversity, and that is known as sustainable harvesting. So, for sustainable harvesting, you have to know the harvesting season, when you have to harvest. So, if you catch fishes, if the fishes they are having eggs, then if you when the fishes are having eggs, if you harvest at that time, then so they cannot reproduce and the fish population they will decrease. So at that particular time when so they are laying eggs, at that time you should not harvest the fishes, and fishing it should be stopped at that particular time. So you have to know the time. Like this, there are different methods. Seed bank protection. You have to produce the seed bank. Then habitat protection. You have to protect the habitat. Uh, Erosion prevention. Then you have to protect the pollinators. Not only you have to protect the plants, the crop plants, but also the pollinators like bees, butterflies, other insects. They pollinate so that we get the product. Then you have to protect from fire, and you have to protect from the invasive plants. We have already discussed about invasive plants. Yeah. Then establish protected areas and conserve biodiversity. So for protection of conservation of biodiversity, you have to establish protected areas. Then similarly, there is also sustainable harvesting of agriculture, sustaining harvesting of forest product, and sustaining harvesting of agriculture. So there are different methods like soil rotation, crop rotation means to produce different crops in different seasons or in different sequence. So um, the production of the nitrogen fixation from legumes that will help allow land to be reused annually. The nitrogen fixing plants, so they will increase the nitrogen amount of the plants. Then if you produce some other crops, then they will use that nitrogen. So this is crop rotation and crop soil amendment. That means to improve the condition of the soil. So repeat cultivation of the same crop again and again on the same piece of land is called monoculture farming. So if you culture only paddy year after year, again and again only rice, then it is known as monoculture farming. So it will decrease the productivity of the land, and there will be no sustainability. So we have to follow the polyculture method and integrated farming system. Polyculture means um, uh, production of different crops by crop rotation, that is the polyculture. And integrated farming means growing of different plants at the same place. In the same plant, you grow rice, and in that area, you also grow other plants, other vegetables. Then it is known as integrated farming. Similarly, there is sustainable wildlife management. So these things sustainable use of marine resources, sustainable harvesting of aquaculture. Aquaculture is the farming of aquatic organisms, which include fish, mollusks, crustaceans, and aquatic plants. So this is known as aquaculture. So here we come to the end of the unit, the last unit, and we also have exceeded the time limit, exceeded by 15 minutes. Okay, if time permits, then we can discuss in detail sometime. Okay, let us leave the meeting.